Everyone has to leave, please. Out now.
On Good Friday, Toronto police brought 23 police cruisers to evict a single dad. Now, I'm going to get to some video here and more of a breakdown on what happened. But before I even get to this, this really isn't a police issue. This is more of a societal issue and what we prioritize and what we see as breaking the law and what we don't. But before I get to any of that, let me first play for you here some of the videos. So this was captured by People's Defense TO saying, here, cops have covered G-Way, at least 23 cruisers on scene. No one can get in or out. 23 cops to enforce an eviction of a single dad and his 2 young girls on the eve of a lockdown. And by the way, on the eve of Easter weekend. But here you go. You see a lot of police cruisers around here. Now, they didn't come in necessarily just to evict the single dad. As I'll get to, at least they claim it was to keep the peace, but there's more to that. I'll get to all that in a second. Let me first play for you the clip here. People's Defense posting this saying, Toronto police roll in full force in 23 cruisers to threaten and attack neighbors and supporters and to enforce the eviction of a single father and his 2 young girls in a pandemic. John Tory, Mayor of Toronto, we thought you said Toronto Police Service doesn't enforce evictions. Hashtag no COVID evictions. So watch this.
Everyone has to leave, please. Out now. Out. Who's the tenant here?
I am.
That's you.
Yeah.
Who are you?
I'm here with him.
Pardon? Okay, leave, please. I'm going to speak with this gentleman.
Please.
You have to leave.
Why do you have to speak with him alone? I'm his friend. Please. I'm his friend.
I'm going to give him the courtesy of a conversation. But he's in here.
He has the money to pay. He has the money to pay.
Okay, step out. Please.
Don't you understand? He has the money to pay. Please.
Yes, outside.
Please.
Outside.
He has the money to pay. He has the money. Don't you understand? He has the money.
You enjoy going to the street?
He has a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old. He has nowhere to go. Don't you understand that? Don't you understand that?
Officer, you're enforcing this eviction right now. It's not a court order. You're enforcing an eviction.
What is wrong with you?
All right, I have another clip and more on this in a second. As you may be wondering, why were there so many people in the apartment? Why are there so many police there? So I'll get to that in a minute. But first, as I said, this isn't really or solely a police issue. This is more of a societal issue. But imagine a world where the police didn't just follow orders, but actually thought for themselves, actually stood with people against injustice. They're supposed to be there to protect and serve. They are public servants. Yet, instead of thinking for themselves and understanding how absurd it is to push to evict a single dad with 2 young kids on Easter weekend on the eve of a lockdown, they instead just follow orders and use that as their excuse, when they could do a lot more and actually work to serve the people that they are supposed to be there to serve. But let me tell you why there were so many people there. So this was an event posted on Facebook by People's Defense Toronto, single father and 2 children facing eviction, support needed tomorrow at 11 a.m. So people showed up to this to help support this single father, which is why there were so many people there, which is also why so many police showed up to apparently, according to them, keep the peace. Here they tweeted out in response to the video saying, the Toronto police responded to a call about a large group of people in the building who were refusing to leave. Officers attended for the purpose of keeping the peace. The Toronto Police Service does not enforce evictions. This is the responsibility of the sheriff's office, which is, that's true. That is what is supposed to happen. But an officer on scene said this.
Well, we have a court order from, it's either a judge or a JP. Okay? Enforcing the eviction. The sheriff was
Are
already
you
here.
enforcing this eviction, officer?
I am enforcing a court order.
You're enforcing this eviction. You're enforcing this eviction.
Then listen,
What you're
doing
is
then
making
here, how
people
about
homeless
this?
on Easter.
Then by all means,
You
want to show
on Easter.
So, as you see there, the officer on scene is saying that they are there to enforce a court order to evict the tenants, even though they're not supposed to be doing that. Toronto police pointed out that they should have been there to keep the peace. That's why they were supposed to be there. But I guess some confusion there as to why those cops were actually there. Last thing here, there is a bit of an update to this story in terms of the fallout from all of this. And also, I got a little criticism here as well of how People's Defense Toronto discussed this or communicated this. I'll get to that in a second. But they say here on Facebook, today on the eve of yet another lockdown, over 23 cruisers of cops showed up at 33 Gay Way to enforce the eviction of a single father and his 2 young daughters. Over 50 neighbors and supporters were there to defend him and keep him in his home. Pigs came in hot, violently throwing people around and onto the floor, knees on necks, multiple officers handcuffing a small woman of color. Let me just stop there before I finish this paragraph here. I get that emotions run hot, but if your intention here is to get people on your side, to communicate your view on in terms of what happened here, it's just not productive to call them pigs. It may feel good doing that. People that already are, agreeing with you in terms of what's happening here won't see a problem with this. But part of the job here of groups like this should be to communicate to a larger audience and inform people and get them on board with you. I just think this kind of language works against that. Many people, I can speak from my experience. If I share this on my Facebook page, people that follow me, friends, family, some of them will just sort of, this will make them less inclined to think that they are on the right side because of the way that they're being, the language being used here. And I know it may seem like, considering the grand scheme of things, that this is really tiny, it doesn't really matter, it's one word. But the problem is, again, when you're trying to communicate with people that have a certain worldview that is based in what our culture currently is, where, you're watching the news, you're not going to see the cops referred to as pigs. You have to be able to speak that person's language to reel them into your worldview. So that's really a note for anybody out there. When you're talking to people who don't normally agree with you, you have to be able to relate to them on their level, speak their language, and then you can make the points you still need to make using actual facts and objectivity in terms of what actually happened, but do it in a way that actually convinces the person you're talking to. Anyways, I'm spending too much time on this already, but they go on to say here, at the end of the day, militant community solidarity forced management to concede for now. Alex, the father of 2, can stay in his unit until Tuesday, and then negotiations will begin with management around regularizing his tenancy. As COVID evictions kick into high gear in Toronto, neighbors must get organized with one another to defend our homes from greedy ass landlords and their pig army. Again, I just don't think it's productive personally. You're trying to convince people that are not normally on your side. You have to be a little more aware of your communication, but that's me. Anyways, still, obviously, the bigger issue here, evicting a single father of 2 young girls during a pandemic. I just don't. Our society and our priorities are so screwed up. The fact that this is a priority for anybody is absurd. These people need help. If you survived financially during this pandemic, you're one of the lucky ones. A lot of people had their lives destroyed. So keeping that in mind, and again, lives destroyed under no fault of their own. Keeping that in mind, you should realize how crazy it is to evict somebody in a situation like this. And of course, the people that are most impacted, his kids, had no say in any of this, weren't able to prevent any of this. None of this, of course, is their fault or their father's fault. And still their lives potentially changed forever because of it.